It being 6 p.m. on Tuesday, the 14th of May, we will start the Finance Committee meeting. The first item is any comments from the public? Seeing none, the second item is that we will review certain departmental budgets here. The first one being the water department. David, do you want to start us off on that one?
Yeah, sure. So, water department, who's the man on the hot seat? Where is he? Chris? Hey, hot seat. I get you said the big thing, hot seat.
You're the next contender. That's right.
So I met with Chris earlier this week on this, right? And I only had a couple things on here that we talked about. A couple things that caught my eye. For instance, number one, we talked about line item for laboratory services went up by 10K, right? And Chris explained that's for the PFAS testing. It's like 2K a test, and they now have 6 sites.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, we do it biannually, so it's every other year we have to do the PFAS testing. So that'll go up and then we'll go back down, cover the expenses for the test.
Yep. And then another major one I noted was water treatment chemicals, which I kind of knew, but just confirmed. So we now got a third
Plan.
the third tank in the treatment plant, right? So obviously our costs are going to go up on the chemicals there. But tell me about the vendor again, the vendor issue.
Good, we're working, that's pretty much resolved now, and that line item was over. They were charging us the incorrect formula on that. They were charging us by the pound instead of by the gallon. So there was a large discrepancy that we're working on correcting with that vendor.
We're going to get a credit on that vendor.
I'll pull that back up where it should be.
I also noted contract resurfacing, 10K in the budget. Haven't used it all at all this year, but we have it in the budget for next year, and that's a contingency for water main issues.
If we get a large scale water main break that disrupts a lot of the street, we can have it's outside of the scope of our abilities. We can have a contractor come in to make that necessary repair without having to get a special article and wait to make that road repair.
So there's that.
Makes sense.
Okay. And then another one I noted was equipment lease and purchases, 75K. Didn't do anything with that so far. Got it for 75K again next year. Same deal, right?
Yeah, so that's it. In the event that our air compressor, our backhoe, our dump truck, has a failure, we need to rent a machine. We need to have that equipment for emergency repairs. We can't be done without a machine. We work pretty well with the highway department, but if their machine isn't available, or we need a machine. So that's kind of a security blanket for us in case in the event that our machine fails. Our machine is an older machine, the 1996 backhoe that's slated for replacement in a couple of years. So
plus Basler doesn't like to give away his equipment.
Okay.
So those are a couple of different line items I saw. Did anyone see anything else or have any other issues?
I just have a couple of general questions myself. You guys just did a rate increase effective July 1, I think it was, or November 1.
November 1st.
Okay. Now, are you comfortable that with those rates, the level of our current budget expenses are being covered okay?
Yes, yep. Right now we just got a grant to do a water rate study. We're working on that with our engineer. A lot of paperwork needs to be filled out and past records. And usually it's something that's typically done like every 5 years. And moving down every 10 years. So the population has grown so much, it's more in line to do it every 5 years. So we're working on that with a grant that we got to facilitate that study.
Good. The other general thing is the status of our attempts to purchase this land where we want to, do another well. Is anything happening with that?
Yeah, so I was in touch with the estate a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. They've finally come to a resolve with their, the family on how to settle things out. And now they're just drawing up all the paperwork so that we can move forward with that. So hopefully within the next month or two, they can have a good, much better position on that. So the family said it's not a matter of who they're gonna sell, if they're gonna sell to, it's a matter of when they're gonna sell to it. So they made their mind up that they're gonna sell to it, they need to settle the estate. It's going through probate, it's just been tied up with that.
Well, I'd say it's good news to hear that we may actually be able to close on that deal after the stupidity of town meeting turning down the potential purchase of the land.
Now, we have money that's earmarked allocated for that purchase, and it's just been Matt Dash had worked on a deal with Teresa Kelleher before her passing. And then,
That certainly complicated everything.
yes, yeah,
Okay, and how about the current head count? What do you have for a head count? You have yourself and 1.5 administrative people over there?
correct.
And then what else?
I have a foreman position that's vacant right now. I have a treatment plant operator, and then I have 3 other water treatment plant operators, so pump operators.
So you really have, 5 people plus yourself is 6 plus the 1.5 administrators.
Correct.
And that's been pretty level now, I think almost maybe ever since I've been involved here,
Yeah,
about the same number.
there's been no staff changes with that, in the 22 years that I've been working with the town, so.
And how about the so-called the water hookup freeze? Is that still
Frozen.
the position that we're taking, that we don't add any new customers?
Yeah, the moratorium will remain in effect until the time we can get another well on site and get everything back in line with that. And we're looking for another storage tank, because the town's getting too big for the water department to be able to meet the demands, but over our pumpage every day. Allowable pumpage on our permits, so.
Now, what happens if there's a 2-acre lot somewhere that somebody wants to build a brand new house on? Can they get an exception or anything for that?
No, they could put a private well and still build the house. They just put a private well in.
Okay. Which, yeah, all right. And my last item was, with needing this rate increase, has that negatively impacted your ability to do any of your capital improvements that you want to do, like painting tanks and, your major expenditures, buying a new truck or this and that?
Nope.
No.
No, there's no been effect. It's just that we started evaluating everything. Our whole rates and everything was far below all the surrounding communities. We did a lot of research.
And I remember I was just starting here when you had your last rate increase. And so that was at least 7, 8 years ago, I think.
Yeah, like I said, it's usually you reevaluate everything, every 5 years. It's been quite a bit of time.
And my last comment on here, I think I've said it before, is that I tend to look not a lot, I want to say easier, but I don't put as much emphasis from a finance committee point of view, looking at the wastewater and the water departments, that I see them as being more independent, where they're being self-funded by the fees that us poor homeowners have to pay. So that, and this is for your information, David, as much as anything, when I see that $75,000 for a lease purchase without spending any money, if that was Paul Basler's department, I'd probably be jumping up and down a bit more and saying, hey, maybe we don't need that in the budget. But when it's in a particular revolving account budget like this, I don't get as excited. Plus it provides them with a little bit of a cushion for, what they might need for other items. That's all I have. Mike, do you have anything?
That looks like between wage and personnel and clerical union and just a transfer of classification that kind of adds up to the same thing.
Yes, yep,
Okay.
that's correct.
Yep. Right, so that looks fine.
Jason?
Have we used any opera funds for water department projects, or you currently have any projects
Yeah,
that fall into that?
We just got, we're gonna use about, I think it's 1.2 or 1.7 million. We got in ARPA money for the water main renewal project on Main Street. So we got one chunk of ARPA money for that, and then there was more ARPA money that was available to apply for and we got, so I think this will be a 0 expense to the ratepayers for that entire project. So, and we just got another grant for the water rate study. So any grants we put on top of that, we can go forward again. So. But the aqua one's gonna be a huge one for us.
Derek, do you have anything?
Nothing for me.
All right, if nobody has anything else, can I have a motion?
Oh, sure. I will move. The Finance Committee recommend approval of the fiscal 25 budget for the Water Department. Personal services in the amount of $644,188. Other expenditures in the amount of $1,450,321 for a total of $2,094,509.
Second,
Carl, I.
Michael, I.
David, I.
Jason, I.
Derek, I.
500, Finance Committee recommends approval.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, ladies.
And now we will do the wastewater department.
So similarly on this one, I met with David. I should have just said yes because he's David, I'm David. It's should be all good, right? But we did go through a couple things. I think you'll note, Carol, you gave us a new page.
Yes.
Someone gave us a new page. We did note, or I did note that the personnel lines that he had on his spreadsheets did not match my spreadsheets. So he has some kind of grade increases for him in a clerical. So there's the change on that. We did discuss many of these line items, and a lot of things fundamentally come back to the third tank that came online this year, right? So, you know, I honed in on the electricity line item, right? Up from 295 to 364. Obviously, we have a third tank that's using electricity and the blowers and everything else. Also, the fourth tank, even though it's not being used, they still have to put water in it and circulate it so everything doesn't freeze up, right? So even though you would think, oh, we're not using the fourth tank, there's still some expenditure there for that, nominal overall.
Do you know if we were running behind there? Because the year to date, 6 months is $109,000.
So we didn't bring that third tank on until December. So basically the first, half of the year, we've been running on 2 tanks. So that third tank increase, we won't really see, until the last half of the year and see how much it affects our changes.
But even then, what I was focusing on is if 109,000 with no change, if in fact that was 6 months, that gets me to about 220,000 for the full year. And maybe it's, just the difference in rates. But if you look at 21, 22, 23, okay, we were spending 255, 272, 285. So we certainly, without this third tank, we have had less electricity. Because I'm always a little bit reluctant to look at it too closely without the detail, because sometimes you can be 2 months behind on your electric bill payments. So
Yeah. Then same thing with that next line item for fuel and heating. Obviously, it's low because winter is just hitting now. So, right, that expenditure is going to be more in the second half of the year. I also noted bunch of notes. Little on licenses, up $1,000 year over year. David explained about the DEP regulations and a grade 5 operator, and now there's a different license for hoisting and hydro. So there's an increased cost there. Number 4 on my sheet was telephone. Telephone 29, up $1,000. not that much, but with the other tank, there's and stuff like that, there's an added phone line, so there's an increased cost there. Chemicals was like a 10K increase. Again, third tank, more chemicals. Contract services. I asked about that. Wasn't sure really what that was. And that's the sludge disposal, right? So at the end, we have a byproduct that has to get trucked out. And that's a 3-year contract on that. Vehicle repairs were up, that line item. Obviously, that's going with like everything else these days. The cost of repairs is through the roof. The cost of parts is through the roof. The only other things that I asked about, and I actually asked Chris as well, and you brought it up. At every one of these meetings, I'm asking the same questions. How did you save money this year? Right? Did you get any grants? Where are areas of opportunity? And Dave raised something that was very interesting that we can have maybe Keith look into. So the facility itself there has a new roof, right? With the expansion, decent sized roof, I may add. And our number one cost is electricity. One of our number one costs, right? How about throwing some solar up on that roof, and maybe deferring some of the costs. Another thing that I noticed while I was out there, he had all his vehicles parked out front, uncovered. And, the salt and everything else and the acid rain, as we know, we may be decreasing the life of those vehicles by a year or two because they're just sitting out. Again, if we did some type of solar project, maybe we do some covered parking with a solar array over the top and put the vehicles underneath. So a couple things I just noted when I was out there is areas for opportunity. Any other comments, Dave?
Well, not knowing what our electric use is gonna be with this third tank. There could be potentially some lower usage than anticipated, so we'd see some of that back. We've tried to do some changes to our chemical addition to see if we can kind of reduce that. A lot of stuff with the upgrade has been implemented with variable speed drives to reduce our electric costs. So some of that stuff may come to fruition, but only time will tell as far as that goes. But additionally, we're in the middle of a rate study ourselves for the department. So some of the things we're looking at this year, we had an increase in insurance costs that weren't anticipated, but with this new upgrade, it's nearly, I think it's $17,300 increase on insurance. So some of these things we're starting to look at, and we're in the middle of a rate study. So as we move forward, we're going to anticipate looking at how that's going to affect the end users as well. And then as far as town meeting coming up, we're going to set aside some article money to offset some of this budget to help offset the cost until the rate study comes into play and see how that'll pan out for us.
You mean you're going to be asking town meeting to authorize some additional funding above and beyond your normal rate fees?
Yeah, just using some of our existing article monies that we have to offset the
Okay, so
shortfalls.
it's money that you had previously been authorized, and now we're going to reallocate it.
Correct.
So, okay.
Also, I forgot to mention, the spring starts the leaching fields. Over at, was it the Davis, formerly the Davis property?
Right. That starts construction.
Yeah.
I think it's the critical area on this item, and if Carol has any comments, I welcome them, is looking at, like you said, the rate structure. And that's my major question here was, do we have any warm feeling that the current rate structure will cover the $3,200,000 worth of expenditures that we've got in the budget here for this year. I know we don't have much alternative, but to recognize that, you know, if it's not gonna cover it, then we're gonna have a rate increase, just like the water department had to. Carol, do you have any thoughts or any comments you'd like to make?
Oh, it's spring at Carol's house.
No, you pretty much covered it. This year, there will be a shortfall without the use of prior, authorized money. So they're gonna close those to their undesignated fund balance to ensure that, you know, there's no deficit. And the rate study will hopefully show that, you know, new rates are needed in order to forego any other deficit in following years.
Very good, thank you.
You're
And so
welcome.
as a customer, I won't have to pay extra to flush my toilet come June.
July might be a different story.
Yeah. Okay, does anybody, David, is that it for you? Mike or Jason, do you have any
No.
question? Derek?
Is the rate study is the cost of the rate study reflected in any of the budget items?
So we paid for that this year out of an article. And the expense on it was a program that we purchased. And it's an intuitive program. It doesn't give you just a timestamp for what the budget and expenses are for this year. We can modify it as things come in, so it's very interactive. So case in point, the leaching fields that the contract was just came out in the last month or so. We can plug those numbers in depending on where that contract lands and see how that affects our rates and what our budget will look like. So it's very interactive. We're working on it now. And it's not, it's going to be an ongoing yearly expense for us to have the software, but it doesn't show up as a specific item in this budget.
Gotcha. Thank you.
One more item that I like to always ask is your head count. You have,
So
you have 1.5 administrators too?
right now we have one admin, and that's how we've pretty much been operating since I've been here 10 years.
Okay,
We have the chief, the assistant chief, then 2 operators, and then a station operator. So in total, right now, we're running with 6 persons,
right.
and we have 1 vacancy,
So you
which
could,
is a laborer's position.
okay, so your full staff would be 7,
Yes,
including the admin.
That's that includes you, right?
yes. Full department.
How long has that vacancy been there? Wow.
So there's been a lot of movement, and we didn't fill the position with Bob retiring, the other chief. And then as people moved up, we haven't backfilled yet. So the position's actually been open for quite a while. So we're gonna probably next July start looking at filling that, but right now there's 5 out of the 6 that are looking at moving into a new position or reclassification. So there's a lot of pieces moving around, and it's just something I've kind of put on the back burner for now.
And are we getting closer to resolving your position with wage personnel?
From what I understand, I haven't heard officially, but things are moving forward.
And I know I sat in on one of those meetings and kind of like watching the grass grow, but and watching it grow in winter. All right, I don't have anything else.
All right. Motion time?
Yes, thank you.
All right. I will move the finance committee recommend approval of the wastewater department budget fiscal 25. Personal services in the amount of $536,887.
Is the,
Am I looking at the wrong one?
New one.
Shoot. Cool. Personal services in the amount of $562,824. Other expenditures in the amount of $2,669,858 for an overall budget of $3,232,682.
Second,
Thanks, sir.
Kyle, yes.
Michael, yes.
David, yes.
Jason, yes.
Derek, yes.
500, recommend approval. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Woody. Michael, if you want a fresh copy of
I'm
those
sure
numbers.
it's floating around somewhere.
I was just gonna send somebody down to get you. You must have been, The next department we have is the facilities department here.
You want to go with it, Michael, or you want me to?
Take it away.
Okay. Michael and I met with Rob and went over his budget, and really, there's not much to say. The expenses didn't increase really much at all, $3,600. And during our conversation, we did ask Rob, you know, how they used ARPA funding and what other resources he uses to supplement his budget. I shouldn't say supplement, but to get tasks done outside of his operating budget. And to date, he's used almost 200,000 of ARPA funds for different things at COA, sprinkler systems, townhouse, green energy. He's lighting, insulation. So he's very tuned into trying to find ways to save money. The big increase is the salary increases. And that's really all I have. Michael, if you want to add anything, or Rob, if you'd like to say anything.
It looks to me like we're going from a part-time administrative person to full-time.
That's
Is
correct.
that correct?
Yep.
How do we get that authorized? You know, I guess it's really more a question for Keith, but year after year, we're having a situation where we're, you know, level services, level funded talking. And, you know, then we seem to somehow add a person here or there, or in this case, add a half a person.
So I can speak a little bit to that. I mean, some of this happened before I got here, obviously. But
Right.
from my understanding, she stepped in to fill a role while the last facilities director was no longer in the picture. Before that, we are also the only department, I believe, that does not have a full-time admin person. We had a part-time admin. So it brings us up to the same standard as the other departments. I have one admin, a foreman, a tech, and 2 part-time cleaners. And so that kind of brought us up to, I suppose, personnel level service. Now, anything else, how it got from A to B, I'm not exactly sure. But, you know, as to value, it's definitely an added value to have someone step in if, whatever reason, you know, I couldn't be there, or someone, you know, I mean, the foreman has their niche, but she also has.
So we've got you as the department manager.
Correct.
We've got one admin, we've got a foreman.
Yeah, a maintenance tech and 2 part-time cleaners.
Really 4 full-time people and 2 part-time.
Correct.
And at a part-time, basically 19 hours a week.
I believe it's like 22, but yeah.
So are they getting benefits then?
You know, I'm not sure. I don't know. I'd have to find out.
Well, with that, even if they're not getting the benefits, they would probably get the stipend for the health insurance.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Okay. Again, I think I'd like to leave, you know, we'll probably approve this budget, but I would like to talk to the town administration a bit about the concept of going from a half-time to full-time. And I hear you, you know, about the benefits and needing it. But I also been around long enough to remember when we we're going to start a facilities department, start an IT department, and start an HR department with 3 part-timers. Within 2 years, they were all full-timers with no administrators. The human resources group got a administrator with the idea that he or she was part-time human resources and part-time selectmen. And I guess part-time IT, because IT is not at a separate one. And then facilities had to have a part-time administrator. And now we're a full-time administrator. It just seems to me that we have body headcount growth in the administrative area more than we do in the functional areas. So when I call it functional, I mean police and fire and inspection and those types of departments. Hi, Keith.
Hi, Carl.
How are you?
Perfect timing.
Glad to see you feeling better.
I'm
Sorry, I was in a meeting.
I was feeling better until I walked in the building at 5:45, but one of the questions,
Don't look the other way, do you? Feel bad to leave.
we're doing the facilities department budget here. And the only, it's more a comment than anything else that I pointed out that, you know, we've gone from no administrative assistant in facilities to part-time, and now we're putting it through as full-time. And I just question how that gets authorized, and is it the fact that people like us reviewing a budget say, okay, and people like the selectmen reviewing a budget say, okay?
I'm not sure what the question is.
What authorizes, when we talk about level services, funding, and we, you know, add a body in any department, or we add a half a body in, that to me, that's more than level services.
So the part-time facilities assistant became full-time in fiscal 23, when the former facilities manager became ill and was unable to come to work. She was operating or somewhat responsible. She was responsible for direct communications staff, facility staff, and organizing projects and tasks need to be done with the assistance of the assistant town administrator. That was in place until Rob came on board. The decision I felt was that having a full-time person there was allowed Rob an assistant to help out with the scheduling of work, things of that nature. That person has also taken over responsibilities for applying for, maintaining records for, and submitting reimbursement requests for Green Communities grants. We this year received Green Community grants of, like, I don't remember the amount. You don't really know off the top of your head, ballpark?
We just got one that just came in. I'm hesitant to say, but it's a tight sum.
It's well over, I want to say it's over 50 grand.
Yeah.
So I'm comfortable saying it's over 50 grand. So the position itself has expanded its responsibilities.
All right, I understand. I just felt that my responsibility to point out to the full committee here and to the public, in effect, when we're talking, that we are going to, we've added a half a body in the facility department in this budget.
Fair.
That's it. I have some concern about the administrative costs, you know. The bottom line of this department, you know, doesn't look like a big increase, okay, but it is 4.6%. And, you know, when we keep targeting 3.5%, And, I think it's worth, noting that that's the bottom line increase. Does anybody else have any comments or thoughts?
Just because I feel like.
Rob, sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So just because I think I'd be doing a disservice if I once again didn't restate exactly what Keith said. A lot of these grants, a lot of these things that are not necessarily day-to-day building they're complex, they take a lot of time on top of helping to coordinate the day-to-day. And that directly brings added value back into the town. So we have our budget. And so we are, I think, pretty good. If you look at the percentage of what we get for funding, we're pretty good in maximizing that. And we're going to get even better at that. And this added hours in that position are directly responsible for that, being able to weed through some of that state red tape and the green communities, back and forth that are not necessarily part of our budgetary, they could easily fall through the cracks, let's say. So even though, I understand the concept of we've added and I get it, there is a direct correlation between that and the funds coming in to offset budgetary costs that would normally come out of our budget. So, and, as far as stepping up, I think, that's,
I hear you.
okay.
I understand a lot of the rationale, but I could also hear the exact same thing from 12 other departments in town. As an example, back in 2020, the facilities department spent $727K. This budget is $926K. So in 5 years, we've gone up $200K. And that's what?
Over a quarter of that is natural gas. It was all, and everybody else's departments that are now all in facilities. So I understand what you're saying. I'm not disputing the totals, but again, devil's in the details over here. We went from $150,000 in repairs to, and we remained at $102,000. So that's not a fair.
But let's get back to natural gas. I was gonna let that one slide. But you had fuel heating of $50,000 a year for 4 years. Now we don't have anything there, but we have $55,000 for natural gas. So I kind of looked at that as just a reclassification.
Fair enough.
In any case, do we want a motion?
I'll make a motion, facilities for personal services, 332,532. Expenses, 593,550, for a total of $926,082.
Second,
Kyle, yes.
Michael, yes.
David, yes.
Elaine, yes.
Jason, yes.
Derek, yes.
Do
Finance
I
com-
weigh in even though I wasn't here for the attendance part? I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry, I forgot you were here.
Yeah, no, and I'm sorry,
I
I
really
was late.
forgot you were here.
I thought we started at 6:30. So
Go
sorry
ahead,
about
you can vote.
that. Yeah.
Okay, 6,
Stop.
7, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me have to do too good. 700, Finance Committee recommends approval.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Rob.
No
Great-
problem.
Great job.
Thank you.
Inspectional Services. Jason is here.
Okay, Derek and I met with Jason on his budget and it's pretty clean cut. Expenses went up minimal, $2,100. But I do need to talk about the salaries, and it's just not this budget. It's going in line to more so what Carl had said. In 3 years, the one line item went up for a salary of $33,000. The admin went up $12,000. So within a matter of 3 years, 2 employees' salaries went up $46,000. So, but it's a bigger picture because I see that in multiple departments where the increases in the past few years to me have been very generous. And this is without any COLAs or increases because those are voted at town meeting. So,
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's one thing that to me is always somewhat misleading that we look at, and I know I'm the one that's always touting the bottom line percentage increase year over year. But I'm always touting that based upon the preliminary budget or the budget that we have when we have these wage and personnel increases that come through as a separate line item. So if they were actually factored in here, then the percentage is even a little bit higher. But Carol's going to tell me where I'm wrong. Go ahead, Carol.
No. I just wanted to point out that the beginning of last year, the head of the department, Jason, his position was reclassified as the community development officer. So between 22 and 23, there was a substantial jump.
Well, yeah, 22, there was a $16,000 increase. 23, there was almost an 8,500. 24 is 9,000. And then if we add the proposed wage and personnel increase, it's another 5,000 this year, which I haven't even included in the 33. I
Right.
mean, I've said it, so everybody can.
So
Digest
so
it.
I'm gonna, if I can just add to that, I guess. So there was a wage and personnel study done prior to collective bargaining discussions a year or so ago that was funded through the community compact grant. It funded and looked at wages for every position in town against a number of communities that are similar to Kingston. Those wage studies were used to negotiate the 5, now 6 union contracts that we have, as well as present information to wage and personnel. The reason that I proposed the rate wage study was typically when you go into union negotiations, you just have sometimes a very one-sided way of how employees should be compensated. And I was looking to have black and white data about how Kingston compensates employees versus similar towns. And we used that salary survey to negotiate the wage of personnel and set wage scales for wage of personnel employees as well as the union employees. There were adjustments that were made as part of fiscal 24, no question about that. I think we were pretty open and honest about that. Fiscal 25, there are no adjustments that are being made to people's wages with the exception of step in or potentially cost of living rates. It's expensive right now to unfortunately to hire and retain employees. The market is tough. The number of people applying for these jobs are few, and it's important for us to be it's at least competitive with some of the surrounding areas that are also looking for the same skill set that we have. So have there been increases in wages? Absolutely have. If there hadn't been increases in wages, in my humble opinion, it would cost us more money and lack of work, lack of maintenance, and costs of advertising for new employees.
I think where I come here on the salaries is that I tend to look at it in total. So that at the end of the day, when we have a final budget here, well, let's say our final budget is, well, right now, the bottom line is what, 3.6%? If it's at 3.6% bottom line after the schools come in, then I probably have no problem living with that as an annual budget. And by saying that, I say, hey, I live with the salaries. Now, if the schools come in and we're at 5.6%, okay, then I think it's up to the finance committee to determine if they want to authorize or to recommend that kind of a bottom line budget. And if they determine that they don't, well, that's when the salaries come into play. And we have to look back and say, hey, we're creating this problem ourselves by having these salaries increasing exponentially over a 5-year period.
If I could
That's
just,
not let me jump in. If I could respectfully say this, Tom,
Sure.
the Budget Advisory Committee asked me for 3% increase. I'm sorry, let me back up. They asked for level service budget. And there was a discussion about 3%. I said I would bring you a list of cuts that would get me to 3%. I've done that. The only reason the budget goes to 5% is if the school can't meet the 3%. And I would ask this FinCom to cut the school budget. Because they're the ones who brought in a budget that's more than what the Budget Advisory Committee gave them for direction. And they are a department of this town. The Kingston School Committee, Kingston School Department is a department of this town who should be abiding by the same guidelines that the town departments have, including having a budget presented when the bylaw says it should. So I would ask, this 5% concern you have is got nothing to do with town wages. It has everything to do with the school budget.
Okay, my response to that is that the finance committee will do everything we can to see that the school budgets and the town budgets are in line.
Mhm.
Right now, if I take the pro forma 3% that has been put in for the school budgets, if I take that out, the town is at 4.1%. Okay, so that I think in all fairness, that if the schools come in at 4.1%, with bottom line at 4.1%, then we have to evaluate, is the finance committee willing to support 4.1% across the board?
Sure.
As long as that's clear. And
I've just been, I guess I'll say one last thing, and I'm sorry.
well, that's what we're here for, to discuss this.
I want to work with the FinCom to get a budget that you guys can support, and I'm committed to doing that. What I continue to hear from my department heads year after year, it's getting frankly louder, is the playing field should be level, and it hasn't been. So I'm not trying to be difficult or argumentative with anybody here. I just think that we have submitted a budget that I think, well, if it doesn't exactly meet the FinCom, I can get it to meet the FinCom's or the Budget Advisory Committee. And I just ask that we all play a level play. Thank you.
And my final word will be that I'll do an analysis on the last 5 or 6 years. And I think we'll see that the difference that department heads seem to always want to blame on the schools is not nearly as much as we'd like to think about at times.
Again, I don't think they're weighting the difference. I just think they're saying the reason.
All
Can
right.
I just add one thing, that we're here to talk about the inspectional services, like these budgets. I would just stick to the budgets that we're actually here to focus on.
Well, the reason why I said globally is because I don't want, Jason has nothing to do with his salary.
Mhm.
So I'm not picking on Jason or that department. I'm just saying, when you look at things collectively.
Yeah, no, I get that, but I mean, I kind of want to follow the agendas as it's laid out. And then I guess my other 2 cents is, so when you did the wage, what year was that? So is it outdated already? Because I would be interested to see what is the inspectional,
Sure. Happy to give, it's online, and so I'm happy. to
that's
give
right,
you
it
a
is
copy.
online, you did tell
It's
me.
online, so it's available for anybody to see. It was done based on fiscal 23 wages.
Fiscal 20,
So yes, it
it's already kind of outdated then.
wasn't done this year. So, I mean, we'll do one again next year before we start collecting bargaining, but we've taken, and aged that report for fiscal 24, fiscal 25 by cost of living adjustments.
What towns did that?
There was a dozen, and they were, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't tell you, but
Right, these stuff there.
nope. So there were a lot of different factors considered when choosing the different communities. Tax base, average tax bill, ability to pay tax, things of that nature, were all part of the characteristics that we use to determine which community. So Duxbury, as I think you can imagine, is in a different tax bracket than Kingston is, so their ability to pay, in many instances is higher. So they were not chosen. It's been a while. But
That's okay, I don't wanna spend a lot of
I
time on
can
it.
email you the documents if you like to see it, and it lists all the different communities. I just don't have them.
Okay, does anybody else have anything specific, any more questions for Jason concerning inspectional services?
Are we up or down? We're doing more or less inspection?
Yeah, currently I guess you could say inspection load, permitting load is rather flat with the local economy because of water sewer issues that we see some light coming. So we hope to see more. If I could just make one quick comment about our budget, that would help. I think put context is that if you look at our budget and really take a look, we have a $2,165 budget, right? Clearly that we spend more than that. And we have a revolving account that I think most people are familiar with, that we do quite a bit of work out of with revenue in and revenue out to pay expenses. But again, our budget's basically $2,165 excluding wages. And that's been more or less the same. It's actually lower. Our proposal for this year's budget in 25 coming up is lower than 2020. And so that comes from good management. We haven't asked for any capital expenditures out of our department. We haven't asked for any additional staff. And we currently took as a community approach to try and be conservative and took our part-time position, which is about a $20,000 a year salary that goes to, it's not shown here, it comes out of revolving, and not filled that position. So I understand that certain line items in the essence of salaries have increased, but when you take the bigger picture, I think it's pretty clear that our budget has certainly supported itself. Our revenue stream is more than double what we spend. So we're looking at 188,000, but our revenue is well over 300,000. And again,
But that's your gross, right? The 300,000, and then you have the salaries that go against that. And then
Correct.
you said now you have a part-timer against it.
no, what I'm saying is that we have a part-time position that we have not filled
Okay.
to save the town $20,000 or more annually to try and do our part as a responsible department. So we understand that money certain places have gone up, but we've saved where we can and everywhere we can. And we continue to do that and we'll always do that. So good management comes again at a cost, but it comes over in an overall essence to provide better service. We've also started a new online permitting system just recently, which we, I believe, managed extremely well. So, and we continue to show more services for the economy.
You may have managed it very well, but it took a lot longer to come online than was anticipated originally, right?
I don't think so.
You know?
I think it depends on who you ask. But as far as expeditiously getting this thing online as quickly as we could, we did, and we're now functioning pretty well at it. To be honest, the only department in the town that's really using this system to its capacity. So our department's doing its part, and I think that's what I wanted to say in an overall scheme.
The 300,000 that revenue in the revolving fund, that's the gross amount, right? The amount that we are receiving from our so-called customers.
That's a total department revenue. That includes building permits, plumbing, gas, electric.
Okay,
It's divided and separated in some fashion to two different accounts. General funds for building permits and then revolving funds for other
and
permits.
then what's the net after we pay Paul's salary and what the inspector's salary, whatever else goes against it?
I think Carol could speak to this, but as a revolving account, it fluctuates because if we take as an example, a permit in for $500 for plumbing or gas, that the expenses associated with that are in the future. We don't know when. They could be a month from now, 2 months, or 6 months from now, sometimes next year from now.
I know.
So it fluctuates, it really does fluctuate. We don't have an exact,
And I was kind of looking for an average that your department is providing this revolving fund net money of 200,000 a year that, kind of just gets lost in the shuffle as opposed to you getting credit for it on this budget here.
There's a
all-
balance.
All I can say is I did an analysis on the revolving fund and it netted out $3,500 at the end of the year, the ins and the outs. So
So
I
it's not a big money maker.
no. So as far as how much in revenue it generated, I can't answer that right now, but I did do the analysis as far as what the net income on it was.
And that's what I was really looking for. That to me, that's the important thing, that if it's generating net income of, pick a number, $25,000, $50,000 a year, that's a lot different than if it was generating 300,000 a year net.
Right.
Because net is all I'm putting in the town's pocket.
I'm gonna move that the finance committee recommend approval of the inspectional services budget for fiscal 25. Personal services in the amount of $186,605. Other expenditures, $2,165, for a total budget of $188,770.
Second,
Kyle, yes.
Michael, yes.
David, yes.
Elaine, yes.
Debbie, yes.
Jason, yes.
Derek, yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jason. Now we have solid waste and
excuse me. You got Mr. Basil representing the song. Thanks, Carl.
The honorable.
well, I was gonna make a comment about, I know how much you love spending time with the finance committee. So that's why we let you sit there for an hour before we talk to you.
Put your boots up.
I met with him at 4:30. He's already heard it.
It is a pleasure coming to the Finance Committee. This will be my 23rd year in front of this wonderful group of people. Not this group, because you've all been replaced, but
I was gonna say, it was 8.
gee, thanks, Mike. Right off the bat, I'm going to say that my department is not here to save town money. My department survives, I oversee 2 departments that supply the town residents with services. There's no, in my mind, I'm not there to get more money in fees. I'm there to maintain the infrastructure that we have in this town. In my opinion, the most valuable infrastructure we have in this town is the roadway system we have. As you can tell by driving through this town, the roadway system is failing because we are not getting enough money to support this. I have discussions with Carl, both as treasurer and both as part of this committee. I've had discussions with Elaine as chairman of the Board of Selectmen, as FinCom members, about the need to start thinking about getting additional funding for our streets. So we'll discuss that when the highway department start budgets up to gap. But right now, we'll talk solid waste.
No, you can go, you're versed.
Oh, come on. I spent 2 hours with you. I spent a half hour with her.
Maybe that's right.
But I just had some, for solid waste, I just had a couple of specific questions for Paul, specifically, basically, because again, expenses have gone up from 24 above $4,000. Salaries are in line. So the 2 questions I had was recycling services. Why did that amount decrease? And Paul mentioned that they had a new vendor, so that contributed to that. I asked why rubbish removal contract increased. Was it a new contract or negotiations? And he said that right now that it's in the contract for a 2.5% increase each year until what, 2029, you said?
Yes, we're currently in a 15-year contract. It is going to go up 2.5% every year until 2021.
With hindsight, I'd say that's a great deal.
Well, it is a great deal because back 10 years ago when the town and I and CMAS sat down, there were other vendors in the state that were willing to bid on our trail. In the last 4 or 5 years, those vendors have decreased by considerably much. CMAS is the only game in town right now, unless there's other options coming down the line for DEP. I'm glad we have this contract till 2029. But I think in 2029, you're gonna see a drastic increase in the cost of the school.
As we did 10 years ago or whatever it was when we had to negotiate a new contract. There was a big
Yes.
increase.
Kingston was one of the first communities back in the late 80s to join CMAS. So we received wonderful terms at that time.
And then the last for expenses, I asked, just for educational engineering services at 23,000. And Paul basically said that was for the landfill work and monitoring and DEP reporting. That, but you said landfill was like 21,000.
Yeah, we have a contract with a vendor to monitor our landfill wells required by DEP to make sure everything that the town buried in the last 50 years stays where it's supposed to be. We're not impacting the water supply. So that's a $21,000 a year contract. That hasn't gone up in 2 years. There are additional little monies in there for additional engineering if we need to have any. With the implementation of the solar fields up there, it required a little engineering that was above and beyond the contract to do. So that's all I get to say about that.
What is your head count?
At the transfer station, I have 3 employees. One's a foreman, I have 2 transfer station operators.
To that, but what jumped out at me based on past years was the clerical union salaries at 10,428. And Paul's explained that's for selling the transfer station stickers. And back in 22, it was 5,200. Last year it was budgeted for 9,800. And I asked Paul if there was because it based on the details he gave me, it's paying current employees, some of them up to $65.70 an hour on overtime. And I asked if there was an alternative to maybe a senior work-off person, not covering all the shifts, but some of them, or a clerical pool or something like that. So I'm throwing that out as I just thought $10,000 for pretty much a month of selling transfer station stickers was high, if there was any way to reduce that.
I'm sure Mr. Basil will take that under consideration when he comes to May or June selling new tickets. Yes, Carol.
I just wanted to say, it's a union position, so overtime has to be, offered to everyone. And I believe it goes by seniority.
Okay.
And while that's true, there could be student work if that was a decision that the department had wanted.
Correct. We have asked in the past for seniors work off. We've got no takers. One of the reasons we get no takers is because from June 1st until July 15th, we are selling somewhere between 20 and 30 stickers an hour, if not more. So we need people that are able to keep up with that amount of transactions and be able to do it with 0 defects. All information has to be manually entered into a computer program. And we don't have time to do it right again. Once we make the transaction, if the information is incorrect, we have no way of verifying any corrections. So we have to make sure that is done correctly. And with that higher volume, sometimes seniors get a little, what's the word I want to use? Jittery, because it is a high volume office.
I got white hair, Paul.
Well, so do I. I'm a senior too now, so.
I was gonna say, what is?
Well, yeah, I have no hair. That's why I didn't sit there.
Paul, do either you or Carol know why the rubbish removal, it's less than $100,000 for 6 months? And, we spend 300 and plus for 12 months. So I'm just wondering if we're behind or, why are we so light through December?
We're averaging around 23,000 a month from CMAS, and my administrative assistant is very, very up on paying all these bills on a monthly basis.
Okay, well, if it's
We can check for you, Carl.
That's right.
Only once a quarter. Really?
yeah, okay. I was gonna say, if it's 21 a month, then that's 250
Right.
as opposed to 350.
I base my, next year's budgets are based on last year's actual tonnage. Now, if I go to exact tonnage to tonnage, and we run up short, there's gonna be an issue coming down springtime. So what I've been carrying historically is 3,000 tons. Last year, we brought in, I think, 2,600 and change.
So you hope you have a little cushion in that number.
And as you are aware, if there's any extra money in my budgets, it goes back to the general fund.
Yes.
I am not one of those department heads to spend every penny that the town gives me.
You're always thanked, gracious.
If I didn't need the money, I'd say, don't allot it to this budget, but I'd rather give it back to the town. than
Can-
have it
can I
come
ask
to
him-
this committee.
Can I ask a very unpopular question? So I'm looking here, the transfer stickers are bringing in about, we'll say half a year, $500,000 a year. The budget that we're looking at is 821. Has there been any thought in increasing the cost of the transfers of the stickers to potentially cover all of the user fees associated with this facility?
I've had discussions with that with Elaine when she was on the Board of Selectmen. That's the going, I mean, anything's possible. But like you said, based on the numbers we have, that would double the price of the sticker.
Yeah.
But why are all the other taxpayers subsidizing? That's the question.
Right now, we offer seniors discount stickers at 50% of the cost. We offer veteran stickers at 50% of the cost.
Carl, I have garbage you got to pick up at my place.
So the question, and that is a question to be had.
I'll be the first one to admit, right? I'm a user, right?
Yeah.
You find me there, right? And it's a good deal. That's why I use it, right? Because it's significantly cheaper than, me paying waste management or whatever to come to my house. And as I'm able-bodied to do so and want to get away from my family for an hour on a Saturday morning, get a coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, I'm going to continue to do it, God willing.
And Derek, from my point of view, from what I've seen, my 10 or 12 years involved here, is that it's really the Board of Selectmen have always felt that this was a service that they needed to provide to the town, and to subsidize it was probably the right thing to do.
Yeah, I figured that was probably the logic associated with that, but as everyone has noted, and as has been pointed out, prices are not getting cheaper elsewhere for the town. So I just thought I would raise the issue here. But thank you for that color there, Carl.
And one of the other talking points was the fact that if it gets too expensive and people can't afford it, then it ends up as trash on the sides of the roads.
The roads, the woods.
Yeah, so that was another topic of conversation at the time, so.
How's our spread though, year after year? I mean, so what are we at?
Discount stickers are making up about 40% of our sticker sales.
And I'd say what, about every 3 or 4 years, you increase the.
Yeah, now we went up last year.
Here.
Last year we went up we went up $40 last year. That was the first hike increase since before COVID.
I was gonna say, my experience has
Right.
been about every 3, maybe 4 years.
No, so it's, once again, do we do away with the senior discounts, veteran discounts, and charge everybody full price? I know you don't like that, Carl, but in order to make it fair, like Mr. Fuller was saying, I enjoy veterans discount because I was a veteran. And you enjoy senior.
Well, I'm not saying so much get rid of their discounts. I'm just talking about just general rate hikes across the board. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's still cheap. From my understanding, there are some people paying private haulers somewhere in the vicinity of $100, $200 a quarter for their trash pickup.
Yeah, I think it's.
So we are quite a bit under that cost.
Yeah, your private hauler is going to cost you like. Does anyone do it? Do you do private?
No, 500 a year, I've
No,
always,
it's more.
yeah.
More. Like $15 a week times 52 weeks. $750 to $800 compared to 220,
240.
240, almost unlimited.
All right, I think we've beaten this.
And we did only,
I'll ask one.
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
The hazardous waste line item.
Mhm.
What is driving the kind of irregular run rate there? Because we have a $9,000 placeholder and we spent $56.
When the hazardous waste day is in another community, we have less input or less participation from our residents. When we host it in this town, we have quite a bigger turnout.
the other thing I might add is, you know, we say unlimited, but it's not truly unlimited. So like we have extra fees there for mattresses and so on and so forth. I don't know, Carol, probably maybe is there a breakdown to the revenue generated? I
don't
mean,
have
obviously we
that
got sticker revenue of $500,000, but what was the revenue generated by those extras?
Um,
I don't have that number in front of me.
yeah.
I know what you're talking
You know what
about.
I'm talking about,
The
though.
mattresses, the large furniture, C&D. Yep.
Refrigerators that, you know,
Now, starting July 1st is, we
we just
started
raised those
charging.
rates.
Well, because for years we weren't, the way I look at it when I deal with vendors is if we get rid of it for zero cost, we don't charge the residents. Now that we have a new vendor starting July 1st last year,
Yeah.
some of the things that we were getting away from, the proposal for free is now cost. So that's why you'll see some fees for ACs, refrigerators, large furniture, stuff like that. Yeah. So I don't have that number, but I can get you that number, what we brought in for other fees above and beyond the sticker.
Where'd the
Hey.
mold shop go?
The old swap shop,
Oh, the swap shop, I mean, excuse me.
but you were right. The swap shop was the old animal control facility back in the late 80s. We used it for the engineer to build the highway department, the town hall, the senior center, and then sat in the parking lot for 5 years, then we used it for a swap shop. When COVID hit, we closed the swap shop. The recycling committee is the one that oversees the swap shop, and they numerous times have reached out for volunteers and not getting it. So the decision was made that if we're not getting volunteers, the members of the recycling committee are getting up there in age also, and they decided if we don't get any volunteers, we're gonna close it. So it sat there unused for a couple of years. We went in there, I want to say October to clean it out. There was mold. The ceiling came down because there was more holes in the roof. So 3 weeks ago, I had the selectmen vote in favor of surplus equipment. It was my employees, both solid waste and highway department, went up there last week, and it has been recycled. Some of it went to C&D, the metal frame went in the scrap metal pile, windows went in the metal pile, and it's now gone. The recycling committee is in talks, so talking amongst themselves about how to get the swap shop up and running again. Having a swap shop running deters people from throwing stuff away where it can be reused. And we did have a lot of people go in there and look around and see what was there. But most people came with boxes, set it on the ground, and then they left.
Hey, we got a use for the Adams Center. Oh, jeez.
So the private pickup services, do they use the Kingston dump? Oh,
No, the only ones that use our Kingston transfer station are residents. We do not help commercial trash.
So there was $94,000 collected in fiscal 23 for
The extra.
revenue for costs associated with fees for other items, white goods, mattresses, construction debris, I assume.
Yeah.
Now, and I keep referring to Elaine when back in her days with the selectmen stuff. Back then, and she was a selectman for a while, and I've been here a while. So back then, the idea was we're trying to cover 85% of the cost. We're close to that with the extra fees that we're charging now. Now, if the FinCom or the Board of Selectmen want to change that ratio, we can go down that road, and it's going to increase the price of the stickers and the disposal costs.
I personally don't think that's in the purview of the finance committee to be passing judgment on how we're doing it or what percentage, et cetera. If it ever came to the point where the town was gonna make a decision on something like that, then the finance committee would get involved.
But I think, for me as a department head, it's a philosophical discussion to have. Because we all pay property taxes, and those property taxes are supposed to fund the town's operation. So when we're looking for fees I pay $5 to get rid of an AC unit, I charge that to the resident. Now, if I charge the resident $10 on that thing, it would generate money for the town. Myself, my property tax is already paying for that. Why would that be like double dipping? Like I said, it's a philosophical discussion. But
Well, I mean, one could make the same argument about EMS service. Why does EMS bill if your taxes are already supporting an EMS? It's because it's an ancillary service that you're getting an additional benefit from.
right, I've had that discussion with the fire chief because he's always talking about what he's getting for fees. And
We're gonna bring this to an end with Pike's last comment he's made before. Government needs to take care of schools, needs to take care of police, needs to take care of fire, and probably roads. Everything else is a desire, not a need.
I move finance committee recommend approval of the solid waste budget for fiscal 25. Personal services in the amount of $277,406. Other expenditures, $544,025. Overall budget, $821,431.
Second,
Kyle, yes.
Michael, yes.
David, yes.
Elaine, yes.
Debbie, yes.
Jason, yes.
Derek, yes.
Finance committee recommends approval 700. Notice how fortunate you are, Paul, that we already took care of street lighting and snow and ice, and you've only got 2 of them here tonight.
well, the question I have is, if I oversee 4 budgets, why do I have to be here for 2 different meetings? Why don't we just do it all at once? But that's another story. I'm very glad that I am glad I have it on videotape.
Pick the topic, man.
I am right now, we're going to highway budget. I am glad we have it on video that Carl has silently put up the highway roads with schools, police, and fire.
That's correct.
That is the first time, and I want to be honest, I've ever heard that from this committee.
But it was roads.
But it's road, which is fine. I'm glad I finally convinced somebody the need to invest in our roadways, but that's another story. All right, highway budget.
Okay. What I did was, again, expenses, I asked for on a few of the items, one of them being contract resurfacing for $175,000. And I asked Paul, how many streets do you think that would cover? And he said probably not even one. So that's enough said with that one. Equipment rental, I asked what the increase was, and he said now that they have rent a milling machine to do potholes and divots and things like that, that it's more cost effective. Engineering services jumped up to $6,000. I just asked, what that was for, and he said for, any property line issues, drainage issues. I forgot to ask about healthcare services, 1,700.
Yes, when we get new employees, when they get physicals, we pay for that. If my employees get sick and have to go to Health Express or something, that comes out of that line.
Police details was an increase up to 14,000. And again, that was anticipating paying for different town projects with details. Advertising, 1,200. That was more of informational for me. And it was some of the work they do, they have to go out to bid and advertise. I asked what happened to the telephone line item. He said that went to IT. Fertilizer and trees and shrubs, I just asked if they were handled by the landscapers. He said no, that fertilizer comes out of his budget for different odds and ends. Trees and shrubs is tree removal, not planting. Vehicle parts decreased, though sounds like that won't stay decreased for long based on the equipment. Environmental supplies, I just asked what that was about. And for some of the projects they do, they now have to take into consideration more conservation.
Correct, for runoff of, if we're digging up the roadway to put the basin in, we have to make sure that none of the silt goes down in anywhere. So now we're putting hay bales or straw walls around our excavation.
And then the medical costs, 2,000, again, that's all incorporated with physicals. Those are what jumped out at me. I don't know if Jason.
Not
if you-
pretty much the same things.
Okay.
We talked about his vehicles and, quite the aging fleet. I was curious if he had budgeted actually enough, but not mine, but felt comfortable with that.
It is for now. I will be having that discussion about equipment later at the month with the capital planning committee.
Can't wait.
And again, overall statement about I was aware of it, about the salaries. Increase of $17,000 for the department head in a few years. The admin went up 14,000. Just the past two budgets, inspectional and these two, 4 employees went up $78,000. That I'm just making a general statement now. I'll be done because there's no revenue coming in. But we'll stick to this budget for now and I'll save it for comments. So.
The, your head count for this department.
Mhm. The highway department, there's 10 of us all together.
There's 10, so that's an admin, yourself,
Yep,
and 8 others.
yep. I've been running 2 short because we haven't had an opportunity, well, we haven't had candidates to fill them.
And that was gonna be my other comment. It looks like you should have an underrun in your labor union salaries for this year. And that's probably because you haven't had full staffing all the time.
Correct. Now, to defend it, because tomorrow night's selectmen's meeting, there is a candidate on the table. And for the selectmen's meeting on the 27th, there'll be another candidate on the table. Like my predecessor stated, the cost of labor is expensive. These people are not coming in step 1, step 2, or step 3. So the initial cost of them, I do believe that you are right. We will have an underrunning on that line item.
But I'm kind of just, again, looking at the run rate for the 6 months versus the total budget.
Correct.
So.
And so the next question is gonna be, when was the last time you had any employee increase, number of employees? I have less employees today than I did when I started here in 95.
Well, that congratulations.
So talking about doing more with less, we're here. So,
Well, let me ask you this though, what have we deferred in this past year because we haven't had these 2 employees?
roadside cutting back, painting of the post, just maintenance, visual stuff on the roadsides. I have a boatload of drainage areas that we've never maintained because I don't have the staff. Once we get the staff, then we can start going in and maintaining this stuff.
Private roads or public roads?
We do not touch anything on private roads. Everything's public. All these subdivisions that you see built in the last 25 years have drainage structures on them, drainage areas. They haven't been maintained.
Do we have an available vehicle for these employees when they come out?
We have vehicles. Most of the time, 2 guys per vehicle. So yeah, right now I have a number of vehicles to match an employee rate of this number.
Sure.
Now, the conditionals vehicles, like I said, that's for another discussion at the end of the month.
Well, there's 2 of them, they can push.
Let's use yesterday's snowstorm as an example if you want to go down this road.
Yeah.
No, I don't think we do. I don't want to sound mean or ungrateful, but for 23 years I've been heading this department. And for 22 of those years, it's been tough trying to get equipment.
I guess just looking at that big ticket item.
Yep.
The research, what is it, contract research?
Contract resurfacing,
75.
that's for asphalt.
What's that?
That's for asphalt when we pave roads.
Yeah, So that's a significant jump from prior years.
But that was a decision that we made as a
Yeah.
part of last year's
Yeah.
budget, right?
That's
We,
what I thought.
yeah, we
Okay.
did, was it 100 or 125 that we
It was a hundred,
intentionally took
correct.
Yeah.
from elsewhere to add into that?
Yeah, just, I guess I was looking for a little bit of color.
Correct. Now,
and-
the budget I submitted
Or
to
a
Keith,
reminder from last year. I don't have very.
the budget I submitted to Keith was probably about 700,000. Of course, he balked at that.
All right.
The need is great. It's the funding that's low. So.
Yeah.
It is. Contract painting, that's gonna run over this year. As everything else is going up in cost, and we're chasing these numbers because these budgets I submitted to here in November. Contracts and prices are going up, and when I renew the contract in June, that's gonna go up.
Right.
But the good thing about highway department with all these line items is if I'm overrunning on one, I try to take it out of there, so net at the bottom line, which Kyle always looks at, I try to keep it under what you guys have allotted us.
But that means you're not doing something.
That's
else.
not doing something else. We're- For lack of a better term, we're paying Paul, we're paying Peter, not paying Paul.
Well, we're paying Paul.
No, you're paying Paul, but not Peter.
Any other questions from Jason or Derek or Mike, Elaine, David, Deb?
Do we have some portion of the schedule booked out for any further discussion to continue last year in terms of how we might begin to start drawing down the needs for the resurfacing and things like that? Because I know we had conversations about it as a part of last year's budget discussion. Is that something we're hoping to do this year or not at this time?
Well, I think that there have been several studies that say, here's the priority of the roads, correct, Paul?
Yes, we need about $1 million a year. Now, how we come up with that money is gonna be a major discussion between this board, the Board of Selectmen, Keith. But we have 68 miles of town roads. That's not including the state roads, that's all their stuff. 68 miles of roads that we need to maintain. That's not including the insurance.
Yeah, okay.
Now, I just spent $61,000 last year crack filling all the roads down the road. And all that does is prevent it from deteriorating any worse.
Yep.
I'm gonna be spending more of that this year on another subdivision in other areas of town, just for crack filling. That prolongs the life of the asphalt. But we're gonna need, and I hate to say it, is gonna be probably a override question or a debt exclusion to start getting caught up to where we need to be. And just so, we're not the only town.
I was just gonna say,
We are a microcosm of the country. So when you see it on national level, bridges, roadways, to the same extent we have here. And unfortunately, we are a cut through. So we're getting an awful lot of vehicle traffic from the surrounding communities, 106, 27. The state roads I care about, but we don't fund them. And those roads are taking the beat. I mean, 27, we did $11 million project back in 2013. Here it is 11 years later, and that road is showing stage. Never mind, most of these subdivisions when the developer turned them over to the town, done nothing. Now, the other thing now is Indian Pond, the old section of Indian Pond. Those were built in the late 90s. Those are starting to really show their age. And unfortunately, the main road, High Pines Drive, is 40 feet wide of asphalt. That is a huge amount of money just to pave one road of the subdivision. So it's something that, like I said, when Elaine was involved in the selectman level, we've had discussions about it. We know the need is there. Carl, when he was treasurer, the need is there. It's just how do we convince the residents of the town, we're all residents, to go dig in our wallets deeper.
let's see, we need $10 million to improve roads. We need $10 million to put new roofs on the 2 local schools. We
15
need
police.
$15 million or more for a police station. The
Admin building at the school.
admin building for Silver Lake. So $50 million ought to get us a good start, and we'll pay that over 30 years with interest. What's that, about $3 million a year, right? Derek?
So what does that?
I was gonna say you made Carol turn off her camera, so.
Checking out.
All right, anybody want anything else on streets and trees?
I'm gonna move the finance committee recommend approval of the fiscal 25 budget. But fiscal 25 budget for streets, trees and parks. Personal services in the amount of $940,986. Other expenditures in the amount of $412,075. Total budget $1,353,061.
I'll second. Whoops,
Kyle, yes.
Michael, yes.
David, yes.
Elaine, yes.
Libby, yes.
Jason, yes.
Derek, yes.
Finance Committee recommends approval 700 of the streets, trees and parks FY 25 budget. Thank you, Paul.
And just so you're aware, I will be in front of this committee one more time.
Looking for a reserve request.
No, next year's budget. And then after that,
Well, next year's budget for what?
for all these budgets.
I should notice now.
Well, I told the town administrator that my plan is the September 1st of 2025.
Good, we can cut that line item back then.
Well, you might think that, Mr.
No,
Fuller.
we'll have to increase it 50%. All right, that takes care of the budget reviews that we had scheduled for tonight. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any, Keith, is there anything that you'd like to add to what you've already said or any comments on what?
I think I said too much already.
No, not at all.
But, and I'm trying to find some additional information, so I apologize, I don't have the phone. There are gonna be, 4 budget changes that I'm gonna be presenting to the Board of Selectmen tomorrow night. They're gonna be hopefully finalizing their budget, tomorrow evening. Those are, we have, made an official offer to a police chief candidate. So we will know shortly what that wage is going to be. There's been a request to increase the harbor master budget, $1,250 for vehicle maintenance.
Veterans benefits,
Say that one more time, Carol?
veterans benefits.
Benefits are asking, we've had an increase now of veterans coming in for assistance. So while the town will receive that money back in future years, the request is gonna be to increase that budget, I believe, $30,000. And there's one more, Carol,
Yeah, library.
library. So library, I had reduced books and periodicals to their fiscal 24 level. By doing so, the library now does not meet the spending standard the state has for libraries. So if you want the library to receive a small amount of money from the state and allow them to participate in some of the regional library programs that are offered, we would have to increase that library budget by $8,500, $8,531.
I have no objections whatsoever to a $30,000 veterans benefits that we get most of it back. The library, I understand. I'm not excited about a $1,250 budget adjustment at this stage of the game. That just seems so insignificant. And I know the harbor master doesn't have a very big budget, but I think that's my editorializing more than anything.
Okay.
Anything else, Keith?
Oh, sir, thank you.
Anything from any of the members of the finance committee? Start with you, Mike.
I am all set.
Elaine?
And I know I mentioned it a few times tonight, just the salaries, just going forward, I'm concerned that that's how they're gonna be sustainable with flat building permits and no revenue, additional revenue coming into the town. That's the only statement I'll make at this time.
Would you have any suggestions as to, what the role of this committee should be or concerning the salary levels?
I mean, I think it's what every finance committee has ever said for years, it comes down to union contracts and I understand to get people to retain people, you need to pay a price. I'm fortunate enough to be able to look at other town budgets that are within Plymouth County, and I just don't see some of these salaries for the amount of residents
And I guess,
and properties.
I tend to be a practical guy and I know I'm guilty of it at times too, talking about these types of things. I can't begin to say how many times I've said in the last 10 years that I don't believe these numbers are sustainable. However, I think that it's upon us that as a finance committee, if we really believe some of these things, then we can't continue to approve budgets year after year that include salaries that we think that are too high. And that's under our purview to say, okay, we're going to recommend that this is the budget for town meeting that is, pick a number, 2% less than what the town administrator or the Board of Selectmen is looking for. And if we're not willing to do that, then I get a little bit concerned about us talking about these things or talking about the impact on tax rates. Okay, that we say, okay, we're increasing tax rates every single year, 3%. And if the finance committee doesn't do something about that, like saying, we're not going to approve this budget because it's 3%, we think it should be 2%, or whatever the bottom line might be. It's just.
A good point. I don't disagree at all. To me, it comes down to, contractual, union wise. It would be, if salaries can't be reduced for contractual reasons, the only thing to reduce is expenses.
No, I disagree with that.
Okay.
There's always headcount reductions that you can do headcount reductions when you, and I think that, that's what happens when you get the union negotiations. That if you have to negotiate a percentage increase that is not sustainable, then you say, okay, we've got to cut some bodies.
I wasn't going there, but that's an alternative, yes.
I'll just make this comment, and it kind of pains me a little bit, right? Because I hear from when I talk to people, like especially in my neighborhood, right? Can you believe taxes? Can you believe, what's going on, right? Year after year after year. And I know some people are hurting, right? But where are they? Right? Where are they? No one's on that camera. No one's here, right? And then we go to the floor at town meeting, right? And we got a $52 million budget. And in 10 minutes, with no questions or objections, the 120 people in the room say yes. And then we argue about other stuff for 3 hours. And at some point, I sit here and wonder to myself, how bad does it have to get before they actually start showing up here, right? And before they actually start showing up at town meeting. And I hope we never get to that point. But, I don't know.
And I don't disagree. Tax increases happen after town meeting. Okay, so nobody knows the full impact until you get your bill the following January. Okay, so with that, I look at it at our responsibility is to Kyle's point, make some tough decisions or comments or statements. And if people listen to us, they listen to us. If they don't, at least I believe we would have fulfilled our obligation of trying to put together the best budget we can for the town with what we hear about the cost.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. Making decisions and making hard decisions sometimes gets you in trouble. But it's whether or not you want to make those decisions. Because at the end of the day, we're here representing the citizens of Kingston. So,
And I think that, Lee, I like what David said about where is everybody? Let's say the finance committee decides that the schools come in with a 5% increase. The finance committee says, we're putting in the budget for 3.5% for the school committee, for the school budget. And that's what we're gonna recommend to town meeting. Then you'll see 500 parents and sitting there that you're destroying the school system. So, because I get the same thing you do, or maybe more so that, sitting in the treasurer's office for 3 years here, but people would come into me crying that they couldn't pay their real estate taxes, or that, I had to be calling them and telling them, hey, I'm sending you out for collection because you're 2 years behind. And I think it's frustrating. I think we're all just reflecting the same frustration that, we see.
I'm gonna tag one other thing onto David's comment, which is that in the course of those 3-hour, often very, shall we say, non-germane comments about the other articles, I think we tend to have things that either do or don't happen for reasons that really lose sight of their impact on the work that we do here and the work that we bring in town meeting. And I think that one thing I am certainly going to try and do, and one thing with what I've learned over the past couple of years, and one thing that I hope that we all do, is use this perspective so that when we are talking about development projects and things like that, and we're having these bizarre conversations about how we shouldn't have this or that because of the impact 7 years down the road. Well, that impact is going into these increases. That impact is determining whether we can make any progress toward that $1 million a year or the $50 million you mentioned. It all ties together. And I think sometimes, to your point about the bills in January, I think particularly if people, and very reasonably, aren't interested in spending the amount of time that we are, I think we need to be using that perspective to help people tie things together that otherwise are getting interspersed throughout the year in ways that make it really hard to see how A, B, and C add up.
Derek, Jason, Deb, any
I just
last
have one
comments?
other point is that, I think we're in a different environment too. Like in my company, we've had employees we've hired and, they don't show up. So I think you have to, if you want good people, you have to pay them. Yeah, I mean, I'm a taxpayer, and when I open my tax bill, I'm like, holy shit, whatever. So as far as finding ways to generate more revenue, not cut services, and as far as getting people involved, I don't know about that. I know this is my first time involved after 20 odd years in the town. So I'm learning, and and some things I see I don't like, and some things I feel like are just rubber stamped, and but anyways, my 2 cents. And just the other question I have, last year, the selectmen, they did a whole question and answers, Keith.
Yeah, so
Keep that.
so the
I
board,
found it really helpful.
good, and I appreciate that. That's why we did it there. There have been just a few questions.
Oh, okay.
I'll gather those up for you. I've got the board meeting tomorrow night, so I was frankly gonna wait until after tomorrow night. I'm sure there'll be questions then, and we'll get up to the finance committee, whatever those board questions were, so you have those.
Yeah, just pretty much their questions were my questions.
Okay.
All right.
Anybody else have anything? Any comments? Rhonda, do you have anything for us? Okay, we don't have any minutes to review tonight. We'll have those probably for the next meeting. So with that, I'm ready to adjourn if everybody else is.
I will move adjournment of the February 14th Finance Committee meeting at 7:44 p.m.
Second.
All in favor? Kyle, aye.
Michael, I.
David, I.
Elaine, I.
To be honest.
Jason,
Derek, I.
So.